And again, all law enforcement will become part of the DLE. So that's what I have as far as the transition to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation goes. As far as OCCC, the only update we have is that I think I indicated before that we had asked for 10 million, 15 million. We didn't get it. We got 10 million this year. We asked for 15 million last year from the legislature to continue the planning and design. We didn't get it. We did get 10 million come 1 July next year. I asked the governor to release $10 million. We initially got approval to receive 7.5 million. But during that process, it was discovered that the Department of Agriculture, who needs to move the animal quarantine facility, didn't get any funding the last 2 years for planning and design, even though they had requested the funding. So I amended my request to $4.5 million, and the Department of Agriculture asked for the $3 million for planning and design. We can start construction on OCCC once we finish planning and design, but we cannot do some of the more heavy construction with the animal quarantine at its current location. So they really need to move part of that facility before we do the heavy construction. And then we did have the recent symposium, as you guys know, which was a big hit, even though it's not listed here. We got a lot of participation, a lot of favorable feedback. This was part of our outreach efforts, as you know. We had some really dynamic speakers come in. There was some pretty good group discussion going on. I did ask Kathy from UH to provide us with a summary so that we could use that information in our planning and design process for OCCC. In addition, I asked her to do a follow-up with, and we're still going to have some meetings on this, and Christian will be included in those. There was some interesting discussion about we should speak to the inmates who were at OCCC now, who were there previously, and talk about what are their expectations for that space and consider their comments when we do the planning and design for the new facility, which makes complete sense. So we will be circling back with UH for that and having some group discussions. And we won't, public safety will not go down and do that. UH will do the outreach. And we will connect them with parole so they can talk to parolees who were formerly at OCCC, and Kat and or Christian or anyone participating in this meeting. If you know of offenders that are completely maxed out who may want to provide comments, please provide them my email address, and I will pass that on to Kathy, and she'll make contact with them as well to see, because we need to find out what works and what doesn't work. And we need to find out, when we do the planning and design for the new facility, what is the inmate's perception of those incarcerated? And then what can we do to make that space more viable and more productive for them? And that's all I have, guys.
Tommy, you may have mentioned this before, but I just wanted to bring it up real quick as a question. How is your, will there be any effect due to your transition on training, the training academy?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So we will be, our training academy will still go. We will share space temporarily. We're allowing the DLE to move in some staff to share space with us down in Evilay. There's more than enough room, but my understanding, speaking with Jordan Lowe, the director of DLE, is they will be requesting money for a joint TSD type facility in Mililani. But to be honest with you, I'm thinking that's years and years off away. So we have enough room to accommodate his staff and ours. DLE has about 2 law enforcement classes a year, whereas we're projecting 5 classes, correctional recruit classes this coming calendar year, and 6 classes the following year, even if the classes have to overlap, because we're not keeping up with attrition. So we would need to graduate between 30 and 33 students every class in order to keep up with our normal attrition rate, and we simply were not doing that. And so as a result, we're down about 20% in staffing. Even though we put double the 50% more officers on the floor in the last 2.5 years than they did in the previous 4 years. It's still not enough because we had a lot of retirements. So we're weighing a couple of things. One is reducing the academy time from 11 weeks to 8 weeks, and providing that 3 weeks as an OJT in the facilities to get the officers in the facilities sooner. One of the other things we're considering is if we have enough applicants from the neighbor islands, instead of bringing them here and paying per diem and all those things, it may be easier and more efficient if we send instructors to the neighbor islands and utilize the facilities we have. This way, those candidates are not away from their families, because that's part of the problem we found out. So case in point, we just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with Kalani Warner, the head of UPW, and his chief stewards. That was the second meeting we had in the last 60 days to try to work out issues with them. And Maui indicated they had 6 applicants, but they didn't want to leave their families to come here for the 11-week program. So I told them that we would take a look at to conducting the training on the neighbor islands. We'll bring the staff there to see how it works. So we're working out those details now. I think if we're able to do that, we might get more neighbor island folks that will come work for us, that don't want to leave their families for 11 weeks. And this way they can go home every day at the end of the training and come back every morning. One of the other proposals was to also do 3 days in the academy and 2 days in the facility as part of the training, so we can figure out if this is really for them or not. So those are details we have to work out with UPW. But anyway, Mark, back to your original question is we will be sharing space with TSD, at TSD with the DLE, because they don't have a training academy or a location yet.
Yeah. Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
Mark, this is Ted. I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Ted.
Tommy, have you given consideration to looking at the content of the training you give to your new staff? It seemed to me, and I've been away from it for a number of years, but it seemed to me it was very security focused. Given that we're trying to transition to a Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, it might be a good time to shift up the content of the training and place more of an emphasis on the soft skills and teamwork that's going to be needed in order to make this transition work.
Yeah, I did discuss that, Ted, with the IDA, Michael Hoffman and Lane Martin, who was down at TSD. He'll be back from military deployment at the end of this month. And so we were looking at those courses to see are they absolutely necessary, and they're not, then what other skill set can we provide during those training blocks that we take out. So if you do have some specific ideas on the soft skill side of the house, if you could just email me separately, I'll include that in our discussions with TSD and with IDA and the DEPC Solomonios. That's a good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, I got some.
Go ahead, Mike.
Tommy, I don't need an answer now, but I was impressed with Jeff Herman of Amend, and he being a seasoned, correction person, and maybe they have a little bit to teach us. And Amend, are you in any way in contact with Amend?
I talked to them. We were at a dinner Friday night, I think, and I talked to them about the issue of the space for the inmates, and they agreed that they would work with Amend, would continue to work with UH and provide information and guidance to us. But I'll circle back to Kathy again to make sure she includes them. They did provide some pretty valuable information and insights during the 2-day symposium. And I did have an opportunity to speak to them at that Friday night dinner. So,
and I'm talking about training too, because he's been around the block, and I'd like to see more of that kind of thing. Thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions? I want to just thank Tommy for his update today. and continuing good luck in the transition. We can move to item number 6 right now, the commissioner's report on our visit to the Women's Community Correctional Center.
Okay, I was one of the 2 commissioners that were able to attend that. We also had the staff with us. And I will say we were very impressed with the warden, Noni. Tommy, how do you pronounce her last name?
Violante.
Galante. And the staff that we did encounter, one thing that I noticed that there's a feel in the air about how staff and inmates are interacting, and it did seem very relaxed there. The women seemed very comfortable approaching staff, talking to us in front of staff or without staff. So I was impressed with that. Let's see, I'm just reading the report now. We did hear complaints from the women about the living conditions, but I also got the impression that they realize a lot of it is beyond the control of the staff. But the conditions are not good. They're not good at all. One of the things that Women's does allow, though, is in-person visiting, and so that women have the opportunity to touch their family, which we think is very important. Okay, building A is they're building 3 new buildings right now. Building A is housing, building B is intake, and building C is administration. We did not go to B and C, we only looked at building A. And it is still under construction, but it is right now scheduled to be open February of 2024. But construction schedules in Hawaii mean nothing. Let's see. Building A has 2 separate units. One is bays, and that's for 128 inmates, and each bay will have 8 inmates in the bay. They are going to be in bunks that are attached to the walls, so double bunks in there, and there'll be 4 desks in each one of those bays. What struck me is how there's total lack of privacy. These bays are completely open in the front onto a hallway. It is double-storied. There is then on the first floor a large day room, so noise is going to be very intense. There was the bathroom areas are at the end of each of the hallways. Down on the first floor, they do have an ADA compliant facilities there. And again, what we were told, and we were told this by the people constructing. So if there's anyone here from OCCC where I got this wrong, please correct me. But the impression I got, they are building privacy panels that will be sticking out of the wall. The shower is a gang shower, so it has multiple heads on it, and there'll be privacy panels between each one of the heads. And from what I understand, they will go from the knee to the shoulders. And there will be no panel in the front. They're only on the side. The same is true for the toilets. There will be privacy panels between each toilet, but no privacy panel in the front. So I was very struck with the lack of privacy that will be provided to the women. Plus, I'm concerned about how noisy it will be. On the other side, there are cells, 12 on each floor. The cells, by virtue of being wet cells, are already a little bit more private. They each have their own sink and toilet inside, and the showers can also be covered from the front, so people cannot see you actually taking your shower. So the intent right now, as designed, it is to be used for jail inmates, but the warden suggested it might be a better fit for the prison inmates. That decision will be made in the future. If it is designated for prison inmates, there is very little program space in the building itself. It would require the women to leave for almost every program there is. Another very disappointing factor is that for the outdoor rec, they are what in Hawaii we've commonly referred to as hobo yards. These are completely concrete enclosed areas. In this new facility, they are creating large openings in the walls that will have mesh on them to improve the ventilation. Of course, it's open at the top and will give some view from it, but there is no grassy area at all. And when we spoke with the warden, she says due to the lack of space at this time, she cannot imagine there being a grassy area with trees. Another drawback from the hobo yard is when the sun is directly overhead, there is no place for shade. We'd have to accommodate for that. What I do not understand, though, when they were doing the designs for this new building, why they did not include a new kitchen and a new medical area. I'll be talking about that more, but with the increase in population, the situation is already very dire in those two program areas. And to add more inmates is just making it impossible. We did then visit Kaala Cottage, which is one of the original cottages from the Ko'olau Boys Home when it opened in 1952. It is all the original cottages are all four-sided with a large rec yard in the center of it. The rec yard has been covered with asphalt, with cement, with other things over the year. It was in very bad shape. The rec yard had cracks throughout of it. It would not be a good place even to bounce a ball. It's not even a good place for that. Surrounding the rec area, you will find dormitories on one side, cells on one side, a mess hall, a program area on another side, and on the fourth side are some staff offices and some additional program area, again, very small. The living area is made up of bays again. These bays are hard-walled bays, but they only come up about 4 feet, 3.5, 4 feet. There are 2 double bunks in each one of the bays, but the bays are only 9.5 feet wide. So between the double bunks, there are large plastic bins where the women hold their private stuff, but there is no desk, there is no chair. So when they're in their living area, they only can sit on the bunks. There's nothing else to sit on. Also, there is really no space for a day room, but what the facility has done is taken the first bay in the dorm that we visited, put in a television and a limited number of chairs. For women who can't fit in the chairs, they'd have to stand if they're going to be watching television at all. The bathroom was in horrendous condition. It is it has sinks on one side, 4 sinks, 4 showers on another side, and the third side has 4 toilets. And when we were there, let's see, two of the toilets, I'm trying to get to that point. 2 toilets were down, 1 sink was down, and the fixtures in one of the showers was falling off the wall. Although there are mirrors above the sink, they are so destroyed you cannot see your reflection inside us. And the warden informed us that renovations have been funded and a pre-construction meeting was held at the end of the month. And we're hoping that this will take place quickly. The unfortunate part is we know it doesn't. Then we would visit Monowilly Cottage, which again is one of the original cottages from the 1952 facility. And Monowilly is strictly a program cottage. The courtyard in the center, when we walked in, it is all grass now, which is really lovely. And while we were there, the women were having a kickball contest and they were really thoroughly enjoying themselves. So they were with the rec therapist, Larson Medina, out there having a really good time. We walked into the library. The library has a large recreational library, and I think the women's facility has always been blessed with getting a lot more donations for recreational books. For those of you who do not know, the state does not purchase recreational books. They rely completely on donations. They do purchase the legal material. And the legal material was available, and it's also available at their living units through tablets that they can use. The infirmary itself is very small and disconnected. I will say it was in good order. And from what I could view, it appeared that the records were in good order. We've been in other facilities where the records are literally piled to the ceiling, but it appeared they were in order. What was in very dismal condition was the infirmary. It is a large room. I cannot give you the dimensions, but originally had 4 beds along the wall. 2 of those beds had to be removed because the ceiling is leaking from an air conditioner leak. And on the floor were towels and pails. You could smell the mildew. Other 2 beds, one is occupied, and it is occupied by an older woman who recently had knee surgery, and she has been there for a while and will probably be there for a while longer. Nobody should be living in those conditions. Then we went to the kitchen, and I was appalled with what I saw at the kitchen. The kitchen First of all, in the ceiling, you have vents that are up there. They were very, very dirty, the vents. The kitchen overall was dirty. The sink was piled high with pots and pans and dishes and other things. There was nobody in the kitchen. I understand that day only one cook showed up for work, and that cook was delivering food. There's no way one person could keep up with all the work that needed to be done in that kitchen. There was also a pot boiling on the stove when there's no one present. We asked to have that turned off. We went into I walked into the refrigerator unit and it felt warm, but I could not find the temperature gauge, so I'm not exactly sure what the temperature was. Also, there was standing water around one of the drain holes in the kitchen. And what was very noticeable, there were a couple of sticky rat traps with peanut butter in the middle of them. I was told that the last time the Department of Health inspected the kitchen, they gave them a passing grade. I do not see how the condition in the current condition could possibly get a passing grade again. Let's see. Also, let's see. Oh, also what they had in that dormitory surrounding the rec yard, there was a mural that had been designed by the women and painted by the women. So the Women's Prison Project, the department, and WCCC were leading and supporting the mural project. It was really quite lovely. The law library, again, was adequate. Ron is the one who usually makes sure that everything is available. Ron, do you have any comments you want to make about the law library? Ron? Either he's on mute or we've lost him.
Go ahead.
And it is open most days of the week. We really don't know how the women, how much access they truly have, because they have to be transported from their living units to the law library. But again, the law library is available by tablet, which is found in their living unit. And I believe that the librarian brings recreational books to the living unit so they can select from that also. Then we went to Ho'okipa Cottage, which is for furlough and it's currently under construction. At first, I didn't realize what it was, but later on when I was talking to Ted, it finally dawned on me. Ho'okipa Cottage was probably built in the 50s. It's a superintendent cottage for the old boys' home. And it had many uses over the years, including being a conditional release center for adult men, and was used primarily by the youth facility. And I think it was abandoned probably about 10 years ago that you stopped using it.
Yes.
That they stopped using it. And there is nothing in that cottage that remind me of what it used to be. It was in very bad condition before. I think more or less what they started with was the footprint. And they are building it in a way that there are different bays of different size, or different rooms, I should say, not bays, rooms of different size. They don't have separations in them. And the idea is that the largest one was what, Kristen, about 8 beds, do you think?
Yeah.
About 8 beds, and it went all the way down to the old cells that used to be there. I think there were 3 or 4 old cells. They're converting those into private rooms. And I put in my notes, yeah, it's a steel toilet and sink with a curtain around it, but it's still your steel toilet and sink, so you got some privacy there. So they're trying to, as the women progress through the program, they'll get closer and closer to the single rooms. So some recommendation from the department is review the new construction plans for building A, considering adding doors or curtains or something to increase the privacy. Prioritize repainting it. It is just a very matte, dull color right now. And we know that paint can, the color of the room can impact the population. And we're hoping they'll consider repainting that. Let's see. Oh, I'm down to the recommendations. I'm sorry, I didn't read this before I came in. I didn't.
Before you go, this is Ron. I'm back on.
Oh, hi, Ron. I wanted to ask about the law library you found at the women's facility.
I heard it, and I was impressed. It was very orderly, well kept. They had enough legal materials, publications, and like you mentioned, the recreational reading was all. I noticed there was I guess was what's called back in my old days, they have the Dewey Decimal classification system.
Yeah.
And so it was very impressive. The full-time librarian, although she was not a trained lawyer or anything legal, she was very knowledgeable, and they're open 5 days a week. And although I had some recommendations, which you probably will read about it.
Give us those recommendations now.
Okay, so like I said, the process, I asked, how would the inmates get access to the law library? And she told me that they would make an appointment, and that she would then schedule them for an appointment, and to let them know when their appointment was approved, she would send a list down to the dorm sergeants, and the dorm sergeant should inform the inmates when their appointment was for. And there's sometimes, she said, sometimes the inmates never showed up. And when she double checked, she said the inmates never got word from the dorm sergeant. So, you know, it's not a common occurrence, but it did happen. And so my recommendation was basically have a better notification system from the dorm sergeants to the inmates that their appointments were approved. But all in all, you know, it was well-kept law library.
And Ron, you also made a recommendation that the bar directory be provided to the women so they can look up lawyers.
Yes, I think that should be in all correctional system, because sometimes, you know, their family, if you think that, you know, most people that are incarcerated, as we know, are indigents, cannot afford to pay their own lawyers, but sometimes their family members, you know, for whatever reason, they they want to hire the lawyer for their relatives, and certainly and sometimes the inmate asks the librarian, and she doesn't know the availability of criminal defense lawyers out there. And so one of my recommendations is basically State Bar Association publishes an annual directory of lawyers, and what they could do is ask for just a criminal defense bar, not the whole directory, but just those lawyers that practice criminal defense should be made available. Of course, there is also, if they want to put notice in the law library as far as lawyers, they can also provide the telephone number for the lawyer reference referral service put on by the State Bar.
Okay,
So-
Ron, and what was, I heard from the librarian when I was in there with you that they have tablets in their living unit to access law material. Did you hear that also?
I didn't hear that, but I know they had it up inside the law library.
Okay, and the reason I didn't follow up with that is that this was one of the last places we visited, so we were no longer with the women in the general population to ask those kind of questions. So we need to follow up on that one,
Yeah.
whether they actually have tablets available to them. Let's see. Oh, and so Kristen has added to the notes, as the Department of Public Safety plans new facilities or housing units, the design should be consistent with the rebuilt and reimagined Hotel Keeper Cottage. And we were all very impressed with that. It had a very large lanai also that will be used not only for programming, but for visitation. And again, it will be for contact visitation. And so I'm sorry, I'm reading this as I'm going along. We were again very impressed with the warden and the people that we were introduced to on the staff, and there seemed to be a very positive relationship between staff and the administration. And then you want to add this about her traveling with you guys to visit the jail on the mainland?
Oh, I can cover that when I hit last one.
Okay. And that's it on the visit to the women's facility.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Ron, and, for being on that tour. So to the commissioners, so we know that every time we issue a report, we do have discussions with public safety, and they have been following up with the recommendations from the other facilities that we have visited. We're currently reviewing that, and we're currently continually working with public safety in order to remedy a lot of the situations that we're finding in our reports. Some of this is really bringing awareness to the issues and then working with public safety to figure out how we can best resolve it and put it on a path of remedy. So thanks, Tommy, for bearing with us as we go through these facilities and find this. And thank you for the commissioners for your time in reviewing the facilities. Today, we will be visiting Halava Correctional Facility. In our continuing role as a commission to visit each of the facilities in the system at this time. So that'll go ahead, Ted.
Yeah, Mark, I have a question for Martha. Was there any discussion of how the entire complex will be used? You got these new buildings coming up. You got, I believe, 3, maybe 4 cottages that have been used over the decades. Actually, the what we call cottages were actually built in the early 1950s and refurbished in the early 1990s. So they're really old, and some of them, as you say, maybe beyond repair. Now, given the fact that, by my calculations, the entire WCCC complex will be over capacity, even after the inmates transfer from OCCC, the pretrials transfer. And given the fact that the department got more than 100 new positions because of this expansion, I think it's a great time to re-envision how the entire WCCC can operate. The other factor is we had this really strong package of legislation and funding focused on women offenders in the 2022 session, including a lot of programs in the community. And I wonder how all of these factors factor in to help us re-envision what WCCC can really be. Did you have any discussion with the warden or any of the staff there?
No, we did not have that discussion. The only thing that related to that was when we were touring the new building A, the new living unit, that the warden informed us it was intended to be used for jail inmates, and she wanted to consider using it for the prison inmates. Otherwise, we did not have that discussion. There were only 2 of us commissioners there, so it limited what we were able to do.
Yeah. Well, I think it's an important discussion to have sometime in the near future, because if we continue to use the old cottages, I think it'll cost us millions to put them in good repair, but also it will extend the staffing. It will require a lot more staffing than because the security perimeter will be much increased. The good thing about the old cottages is they're really accessible to outdoor areas like the farm, and it's easy for the women to participate in programs like that. Mark knows this much better than I do, because Mark actually made use of some of these areas. But anyway, just some thoughts.
As we move forward with discussions with public safety through the oversight coordinator, we'll bring those thoughts forward, Ted, so we can have some movement on understanding. I think when we look at the female population and that they're all going to be housed in a single place, there can be a lot of innovation in how we create the continuum of programs and treatment in order to better create opportunities for them for reentry as well. So we can follow up with that.
Yeah, well, one more question. You mentioned renovation apparently to allow for furloughs from WCCC.
Yes.
Did you have any discussion about how these furloughs will work in conjunction with community-based programs like Fernhurst? I remember about a year ago when we toured Fernhurst, one of our concerns was that Fernhurst was badly underutilized, and the department had thrown obstacles to administrative obstacles, which made it difficult for the women participating in Fernhurst. So I think that's another important discussion to have, especially in context with the package of the women's programs that the legislature approved.
Ted, we will follow up with a meeting at Women's about these issues. And I'm going to ask you to join us by video at that meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm sorry I can't join the tours right now because of some health conditions, but you know, if I
Yeah.
can participate, I will.
We
Okay.
want you to participate very much because, you know, as I'm talking to you, I realized how much we were lacking in what we saw and what we discussed while we were there.
Yeah, I realize your time was limited.
I also will say I have a very strong bias to have furlough programs located away from facilities. They should not be part of facilities. They are to reintroduce the offender to the community, or the men or women who are exiting our system to the community, and having them located at the facility is not, in my opinion, does not serve that well. And also at the women's facility, transportation into where most of the jobs are, which are in town, will be difficult. People have to get up very early to catch the buses, where Fernhurst provided much easier access to different programs and to jobs in the community. But we will follow up next meeting with additional information. And as I said, we'll set an appointment with the staff and the warden at WCCC, and Ted will be included in that discussion.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Martha, for that report. Commissioners, any other questions for Martha's report? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 7. Hey, Daniel, are you there? Are you ready?
I'm here and I'm ready.
Okay. Well, Daniel Mistak from the Big Island is going to come in, give us some presentation on Medicaid changes and its relevance in the Department of Public Safety.
Great. Thank you all. I really appreciate the chance to be here. It's hard to imagine. About 3 years ago, we all started getting online and doing a lot of these meetings, and I was ranting about new opportunities coming through MedQuest back then. And I'm happy to say that even as of this week, there have been some pretty significant changes in Hawaii about the opportunities available with connecting our health systems and our justice systems together. I was asked to come and talk today way back in July before the news of this week had happened. So I want to be clear at the very beginning that I'm definitely not speaking for the MedQuest program in Hawaii. I'm not speaking for the MedQuest division. I am here as someone who is deeply, deeply connected to the islands, and who has had the pleasure of serving as an attorney for people with some pretty critical needs on the Big Island of Hawaii, but also working nationally as an advocate for some significant changes to policy that we're going to talk about today that have just been realized in the last year. And that Hawaii is taking advantage of. So I wanted to make sure that the Oversight Commission had the chance to hear what the sort of the broad opportunities are that are available. And I'm going to take just a few moments also to talk about what was included in the proposal from the MedQuest division that is now available for public comment, which you heard Kat Brady talk about at the very beginning. So if any of this piques your interest and you want to participate in the public comment period, I would definitely encourage you to do that. There's a 30-day comment period. I think that 30 days began on Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. I'm not really sure exactly when the date that this waiver was released, but you have 30 days to comment about it. So as Mark said, I lived on the Big Island for 4 years. I had the pleasure of meeting many of you and serving with you in a variety of capacities. But since then, I have moved back to Ohio, which is where I came from, in order to be closer to family and to continue this work and be closer to DC, because that is often where I'm dragged to kicking and screaming to work on these efforts. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what the nonprofit that I work for, Coaches Community Oriented Correctional Health Services, is and what we do before we kind of just go into the next part. So inside the health world, we have this idea that care is supposed to follow people wherever they are. So that means if you're receiving care in the hospital or a clinic or a physician's office. All of those different facilities are able to communicate with one another to make sure that they aren't doubling efforts, that they aren't spending money, they aren't actually going against what other people are trying to do, and really to coordinate the services for an individual who has needs. One of the places where people who are most critically at need receive care is inside of our jails and inside of our prisons. Often people are incarcerated with some pretty significant mental health and physical health conditions. Those conditions are often why they end up inside of jail to begin with. And once people are leaving these facilities, they often don't have the connections to services in the community that can help them be able to avoid a reincarceration. And so our goal is to try and make sure that the care that people receive in the community follows them inside of the jail, and that the care that they receive in the jail can also be shared with the providers in the community, so that we don't have this discontinuous and frankly expensive way of providing care for people who are pretty critically at need. Obviously, there are also disparities inside of our health system, racial disparities inside of our health system and inside of our criminal legal systems. And so being able to make sure that we are meeting people's needs wherever they are is a way to also identify and resolve some of those disparities is the hope. So we have worked since 2005 to connect correctional and community health systems through a variety of efforts. I, as an attorney, have been working on specifically some of the statutory and regulatory barriers that justice systems face and Medicaid systems face in order to provide services while people are incarcerated. And so we do this by providing technical assistance. We also help develop policies. So this 1115 stuff is something that I've been working on pretty intently for the last 10 years. And then we also convene people, bring them together in order to talk across the different silos. I'm sure that many of you here have probably never gone to a community meeting about Medicaid waivers before. And I'm sure that many people who are inside the health system have not come to a lot of oversight commissions or meetings around what people are around how our correctional systems operate. And so we try and bring those two groups together to start talking the same language so that they can resolve some of their common issues, because many of the people who end up incarcerated with critical needs are the exact types of people that nobody wants to be inside of those systems. But because the systems don't exist to try and divert them someplace else, that's where they end up. So we are talking about Medicaid today. Medicaid is a federal state partnership, and inside of Hawaii, the Medicaid program is called MedQuest. So if you're hearing me say Medicaid or MedQuest, it's the exact same thing. Also, Medi-Cal is the name in California. Each state has their own name for what they call their Medicaid system. But why is Medicaid something that's important now? The reason is because prior to 2014, really, we did not have, Medicaid was not broadly available for everybody. You had to meet certain criteria to become eligible for Medicaid. But since Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, now basically everyone who's involved with the justice system has access to Medicaid for the first time. And so what we're trying to do is really allow for those Medicaid services that people are just, it's only been about a decade since people have been eligible for these services. We're still trying to construct the right kinds of systems to wrap around people wherever they are. And that's what we're really talking about today, is this next opportunity to try and bring in the jail healthcare providers into the broader Medicaid system, and to allow some of the community supports that exist to start reaching in to support people while they're incarcerated. The reason why this is a challenge is something called the inmate exclusion policy. So inside the Social Security Act, which is what created Medicaid, there was one line that said that a person is not allowed to receive Medicaid services, even though they might be eligible under the criteria that the eligibility criteria that they qualify for Medicaid through. They're not allowed to receive those services if they're what's called, quote, an inmate of a public institution. And so what this has done historically is really made it a challenge to create these systems for people while they're incarcerated, to allow them to be able to see their providers while they're incarcerated, and really has isolated the correctional health system from the broader health system as a whole. And of course, in the United States health system, I don't think is a surprise to anybody, is a bit of a disaster. It shouldn't surprise any of us that, of course, people who are involved with the justice system are facing some of the most patchworky components of our health system. And so really what I've been trying to do is say, how do we do something about this inmate exclusion so that we can start bringing jails inside of our broader health system? Well, we had a huge leap forward that came in April 17th of 2023, when the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which is the agency that oversees the Medicaid program, released what's called a state Medicaid director letter. That's the name of it. There is in quote. You can Google that. It talks a lot about the opportunities that are available. I think it's a really fascinating read, but I'm also a giant nerd, so your mileage may vary. But the waiver would actually allow for states to request to waive what's called the inmate exclusion under certain conditions. And this waiver of the inmate exclusion is frankly quite broad. You could offer the entire set of benefits that are inside the Medicaid system, or you could, pare it down to just specifically offer services to certain subpopulations, but you would be allowed to offer those services up to 90 days before release from incarceration, which for the vast majority of people who are in our CCCs, that's going to be the entire time that they're incarcerated. And for those who are re-entering from lengthy stays inside of one of our prisons or coming back from Saguaro, this is a huge opportunity to allow them to start transitioning to meet with community providers and to start beginning receiving community services before they're released, so that it isn't just an immediate cliff once someone comes out into the community and they've got to figure out how to orient themselves everywhere. Rather, they could already have established some of those really important relationships before people leave. So like I said, you could offer the full set of benefits, or you can offer a smaller set of benefits, but whatever the state asks for, you have to include at least these three things, which is medication assisted therapy. So that's, Suboxone, methadone, naltrexone, 30 days of bridge medication, which is of course, very, very important for people who have some mental health conditions that might have resulted in them being involved in the justice system to begin with. Often it can be a real challenge to get your MedQuest turned on, meet with the provider, meet with the prescriber, get your medications that you might need in order to avoid decompensating and winding up back in incarceration again. So this 30 days of bridge medication is pretty huge. And also the fact that you're already enrolled and hopefully meeting with your provider before you leave means that you aren't going to be waiting for all of these sort of bureaucratic levers to be turned on for you to have access to your medications. So it's a huge win. And then finally, of course, targeted case management or case management is something that would also have to be offered. Hawaii just this week. So, if we had talked last week, I wouldn't have this information for you. And again, I'm not speaking for the MedQuest division, and this is just what has been proposed as of this week. And we're in the midst of a 30-day public comment period, which any of you can participate in, and I encourage you to participate in. These are the benefits that the MedQuest division is specifically asking for people. For qualifying beneficiaries 90 days before release. That's case management and care coordination. I just copied and pasted this from their waiver that they've put forward of the inmate exclusion. And they define case management and care coordination as conducting an initial care needs assessment, developing transition plans, making referrals for community-based Medicaid services and other social services, developing medication management plans in consultation with clinical providers, and coordination and other management supports. So that's pretty huge. I mean, that's a lot of benefits when it comes to care management, case management, and care coordination. Again, that's 90 days before release. So that's a really large on-ramp into getting people connected with services before they leave. Also, they're requesting physical and behavioral health clinical consultation services provided by carceral or in-reach community-based providers. So that can mean either it would be provided directly by PSD or else through partnership with community-based providers. Also is about laboratory and radiology services, durable medical equipment, which is very, very important for a lot of people who will need access to this post-release in the community. I have seen cases, not in Hawaii, but in other places where people who need wheelchairs are released without access to wheelchairs. And so things like durable medical equipment for post-release is absolutely important. And then finally, the 30-day supply of medications, including medication-assisted treatment for use post-release into the community. One thing I just want to mention that is not on there is the Well, anyway, I think there's lots of things I think that we could ask about the MedQuest division about what they are hoping to do and work with on this. But these are the things that have been asked for that are now available for public comment. I want to point out too that, you know, so Medicaid, one of the benefits of Medicaid is that it's paid for mostly by the federal government, depending on how the person is eligible. But for the most part, the federal government would be paying 90% of the costs for these, and 10% would be by the state. But this is not really a cost shifting. Rather, what is required is that any dollar that's offset by federal dollars needs to be reinvested into the state to either provide diversion services, expand opportunities, and expand services to pay for whatever might be necessary to get this up and off the ground. So it isn't cost shifting, because there's still going to be the same amount of state expenditures. But the thing is, it's going to free up a lot of state dollars to be reinvested in a lot of really interesting opportunities that also, you know, I think in my opinion would I think it could be really useful for thinking about what size the jail needs to be, how a jail might operate, what sorts of diversion opportunities are available to people who are entering. So we could even work on some of the front end issues for people who are entering the justice system. I would be remiss also not to talk about two statutory changes that have also happened to the inmate of a public institution exclusion. These ones affect juveniles, which is ages 21 and under, unless you have aged out of foster care, which then you will be eligible for this 24 days and under. This is going to require, beginning in January of 2025, to allow for screening and diagnosis of sentenced juveniles up to 30 days before release from incarceration, and allow for 30 days of case management before and after release. That's a requirement. That will be a requirement January 1 of 2025. So this is a really good chance to kind of synergize the opportunities between both these 1115 waivers that I just talked about and also the new statutory requirements that are coming. And then section 5122 of the omnibus appropriations law from last year would allow for the states to opt to maintain Medicaid benefits for unsentenced juveniles who are awaiting the disposition of their trial the entire time they're incarcerated. The state would have to opt into this through what's called a state plan amendment. And just want to make sure that these two things are also on the radar as we're thinking about this pretty exciting opportunity that's coming. So with that, I am happy to answer some questions. I want to also make sure that this is that I'm just available for you all too, so we can answer any questions about these big new changes as well.
Commissioners, any question at this time?
Daniel, a number of people are asking if we can post your PowerPoint on the website, and Kristen said she plans on doing that.
Great. And I sent an updated one, Kristen, because okay, great, perfect.
I need to read more of this to be able to ask intelligent questions, so I'm going to hold off.
Don't worry. I mean, it's I don't think there's any stupid questions too. I mean, this is really a massive change to both the Medicaid system and also to the correctional systems too. And so everyone is grappling with this at the same time. I have just been lucky enough to be a bit of a nerd in this process and have been in this besides advocating for this, I've also been a stakeholder and subject matter expert for a variety of federal agencies who have been working on this topic too. So happy to answer any question here or offline on this as far as my take is on it, right? I'm just a subject matter expert. Obviously, the federal government makes their own choices in what they and how they're implementing it too.
I mean, of course, my biggest concern would be how PSD is able to implement this.
Yeah. So if we want to look at it, lessons learned from what's happening right now in California and Washington, who have already had their 1115 waivers approved. So California had their waiver approved in January of this year. They still have not yet turned on any of these benefits yet. So there's one of the the joys of working inside of the Medicaid system too, is that there can be a long runway for getting this up and ready. For California's waiver, they have to actually do an analysis and a readiness assessment to figure out whether or not they're ready for this. And that will be for sure a part of this process, the implementation process. And so I would say that there's going to have to be new relationships that are forged between PSD and managed care organizations who will be doing a lot of the care management as well. And so there's just really a lot of, I think, stakeholder engagement and cross-pollination in order before this gets up and off the ground.
Dan, we have one in the chat. Kevin Dayton is asking for your contact information.
Sure. Yeah, I can send that to him via chat here.
Yeah, Dan, thank you so much for this information. It's really complex, you know. I think another conversation down the line will really be, you know, trying to understand, you know, how billing works within public safety in terms of, you know, the individual shows up at the medical unit, there's a diagnosis, whether he has to go to an outside doctor or whether, you know, they can be treated on the inside, how are the communication processes? I know in the youth facility, a lot of the MedQuest stuff and decision makings are always made outside by external forces. And so you're always playing a waiting game to get something approved so that you can move forward with a treatment or care. And so I think as we move forward, we'll try to begin to inquire with public safety on how this can be more beneficial for the manner by which they provide healthcare in the system. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, those are great questions. I mean, this, and it's not, no one should be surprised that these are like brand new questions too, right? Like I said, this is essentially, there's been a huge gulf inside the healthcare system where, you know, this never talks to this, the justice system and the health systems never talk. So this is all brand new. I will say one of the, you know, good steps forward is that the PSD is moving through the process of getting their electronic health record. I think that that's an absolutely important backbone for this, and it's going to be really helpful for implementation. And it'll be good. I think that everybody will start being trained on that before we finally get to this stage. And some of these electronic health record companies are absolutely grappling with this question at the same time, because this is new for them too. Many of these EHRs have not really been the same kinds of EHRs that have connected into Medicaid systems. So I think that we're actually positioned really well to rely on the electronic health record vendor to be doing some of that heavy lifting with communication and billing and things like that.
Yeah, this is very important for us to hear. Like Martha said, there's a lot of us as commissioners, we got to process the information, trying to add our experience to it. But there's no doubt in our mind that today we'll start a relationship with you and your organization in moving forward.
I felt like we've had this for a while.
Yeah.
Mark, I have something.
Go ahead, Mike.
Dan, it's good to see you, albeit all the way 4,000 miles or whatever, but
right.
And I hope your chickens are okay in Kona, wherever they are.
They're doing well, and they've got cousins here in Ohio now too. So.
The concern I have, I was a surrogate recently for someone in the hospital, and when they leave, they come out with a discharge plan, very smooth, and that's a no-brainer. And right. I have not seen I don't know what public safety does under Act 179. We have a relationship with Tommy here where we're trying to get rehabilitative and change over more horizontally from punitive. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to use the medical system. They worry a great deal about iatrogenic effect, the medical mischief, the harm caused by the care. Why should we be making things worse for our PAHO? And I know you agree. And this seems to me the philosophy. I don't want to get in the weeds too deeply. And you've got a lot of stuff here to think about. How do we smooth this out with a philosophy that we have a fiduciary care for each and every, just as you call them, justice involved person? How do we make that happen? It seems like Tommy's aboard. We had Amanda here. Have you studied Amanda out of Washington?
No, huh?
You might look that up. We just had a big 2-day gathering here, and it seemed to me a very compelling model. how do we avoid what I call jurogenic effect, the harm caused by the legal system?
Right.
So I'm looking for best practices, evidence-based practices. Who does it best in the US, if anyone?
Yeah, I mean, I wish that I had that answer, right? My answer is it's going to be you guys, is my hope. Right. I mean, so there's a lot of places that have really tried, like Barrett County in Texas, obviously the Miami-Dade model, but all of those places have not expanded Medicaid. So this is one of the really new, and there's the transitions clinics that exist as well, which are federally qualified health centers that focus on people who are leaving incarceration. But the truth is, like, if there's no money there, you can't build these systems. So the way I look at this is really turning on that spigot of money for the first time to allow for us to kind of have a foundation to build this out. And there will be people who will rise up and will be the ones who are doing it. And I think, frankly, because Hawaii is in the process of adding rehabilitation to not just the name, but the ethos of what is supposed to be happening inside of PSD, that this is a real chance to, I think, embody, to use the real material means that exist, the money that's now going to be available, but also just the symbolic change of what's happening there as an opportunity to really build out all of this and to maximize these opportunities that are coming through statute. And I know that's like a really like wishy-washy or like mealy mouth way of saying it, but the money's going to be turned on. The relationships are there. Going Home Hawaii on the Big Island is doing a really great job of trying to bring people together to support people. And so I think that there's a really interesting, that this is a really interesting opportunity. And frankly, with, Governor Green is a doctor, and I think, and Dr. Michael Champion is on board to work with this connection between mental health. I think you've got some really key players lined up. And I think that can really hopefully take any of the barriers out of the way. And if I could just, I guess, test out something that I've been thinking about, that like inside of the health world, we have that picture of that staff, with a snake on it, right? Like we have this symbology absolutely everywhere. And I've been thinking about what that symbol means and how it's actually part of what we are, which, if you go back to the book of Numbers, right? I know that there's people of faith here, but just looking at the book of Numbers where the Hebrew people were wandering the desert, some snakes bit them. And so in order to be healed, they took the snake off the ground, put it on a bronze snake on a stick and held it up, and people looked at it and they were able to be healed. And I think about this in terms of really what happens inside of our justice systems, that this is really a health center, a place where people receive health that has been often overlooked, crawls on its belly, if you will, to try and use metaphorical language. I think that this is an opportunity for that to be lifted up in order to actually be something that can bring healing, because frankly, some of the people with the most critical needs are the ones inside of our justice system. And inside the health world, we know if we focus on the people with the highest needs, we drive down costs, we improve community outcomes. And I think that this is a really big chance to embody the opportunities, to embody that symbol of the snake on that staff, if you will, in order to actually to do more healing than just inside of our justice system, but to have this be a bigger part of improving health, reducing disparities, and really maximizing these opportunities for all of us to do well.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Like I said, we're going to talk more as we move forward, but we need to move on in our agenda at this time. And thank you and your chickens.
Yeah.
Did you bring one on the plane as a comfort animal?
No, I had a dog. I came with 2 dogs and 2 cats to move back to. So I had a lot going on. Yeah. The chickens were all rehomed.
Thanks again, Dan. We appreciate your time and being with us this morning.
Thank you.
I want to take the next item on the agenda, item 8 and item 9, and just call upon our great oversight coordinator to go ahead and begin to share with you on the data webpage release.
All right, so commissioners, as you know, for over a year now, I've been working really closely with an organization called ThoughtWorks. They're an incredible consulting organization on the mainland, and they've been working with us because they believe in our work. And they've been working with us completely at no cost to the commission. And so everything that they've done, all the hours that they put in, I really just have to reiterate, not only is the company amazing, but the people who work at the company are amazing. One thing that we have continuously talked about is the importance of data and the importance of really being able to highlight any and all information that we have access to. And so ThoughtWorks is very aware of that. And so we work together to create a data web page. This is the first time that we're going to be releasing it. It's going to continue to be updated. It's going to continue to be, built in the best way it can be. But I'm extremely excited to introduce the team. We have Marilia Soras, who has been leading this effort. We have Karan Jones, and those are the two who will be presenting on this data webpage today. But we also have Shaq Bamani, and even though he's not presenting, I don't want him to fool you because he's been an incredible partner in all of this. And so I want to hand it over to ThoughtWorks to bring up this page, but I also just want to briefly toss in that if you have feedback or any thoughts on the page, we're always open to that. I just want to reiterate one more time, like this is the first launch, and so it's not done. But we're excited to get it out to the public. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over to Marilia, and thank you so much again for the hours and hours and hours of work that you've put into this.
You're unmute her.
I'll start.
Yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
I'll start. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen, for allowing us to share the work we did around the public data website. Hello, my name is Karan. I'm a senior designer for ThoughtWorks. My background is product design and strategy. I've been on this project for 4 months with a primary focus on driving and leading user experience design. I'm going to give a high-level walkthrough of the website, and my colleague Marilla will be doing a walkthrough of the data dashboard section. Marilla, would you kindly introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Marilia Soares. I'm a product manager here at ThoughtWorks, and we've been partnering with the commission for about a year, but the last couple of months, we were focusing on having a public site that can talk a little bit about what's going on in jails and prisons in Hawaii. And we partner with the commission, especially on, as Kristen said, on representing the data and the story behind the data and telling what are the critical problems we have in prisons and jails in Hawaii. So as Kristen mentioned, this is the first time we are showing the website. There will be a lot of updates to be done, but we wanted to give you an overview of what we have achieved so far and get your feedback for future improvements.
I'll be going into, we're kind of going back and forth. So Morel and I will kind of, we'll be going through the site. So for a start, I want to provide a backstory of why we created this website. From our user research study that was reported last town hall meeting, we identified key insights and outcomes on the current state of the Hawaii correctional system. We wanted to discover the most effective way to share the data findings and relevant information for public consumption. We ThoughtWorks, we conducted a design thinking workshop with the Hawaii Correctional Oversight Commission team. We identified target audience, brainstormed ideas on what data and information should be shared with the public, and we prioritized goals to understand the benefits. Our main goal for this website is to create a platform to the public to have a voice to inform, raise awareness to legislators, educate, share facts and data about the current state of Hawaii correctional system. In turn, we designed a website that is user-friendly, simple and easy to read, thought-provoking, and ensures continuity throughout the look of the current hcsoc.hawaii.gov. That was a lot. Marilla, can we show the website anyway?
Yes, do you want me to present and you?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, so can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So in turn, we going back, we wanted to make sure this is user-friendly and simple and easy to read, as you see. This site is a one scrollable page, adaptable to mobile devices. When you click on the menu tab, it will quickly jump to a section of the page which is easy accessible. We even made sure the URL name was simple and discoverable on search engines. From our workshop discovery, there were key features in the section of the website that we wanted to highlight. One was the ability to download the latest annual report, which you can see is shown on the top banner area to encourage visitors to click on the button to read the latest annual report. Two was to share and inform data trends and insights, which we will discuss later. And the third one was educate people about the myths and facts. Will be the last section of top of the discussion. As you see in the About Us section, we summarize the vision statement developed collectively as a team by core organization values. The third is the most important one that we're going deep dive into is the data dashboard allows users to explore the most relevant data around Hawaii jails and prisons. The data is broken down into categories. And I will be handing over to Marilla to kind of go in detail in the categories. So this is the most important piece that she'll be discussing.
Thanks, Karam. So yeah, as I mentioned, our goal was primarily to be transparent and tell the story of what is going on in prisons and jails in Hawaii. So we created some categories of data that we wanted to present to the public. So you'll see on the left, the categories such as demographics, overcrowding rates, incarceration status, population at each facility, some demographics, classification and housing type, and for the public to understand, you know, what is the profile of the people in custody? Where are they in custody? What are the main issues we see gathering this information from the data in the different settings? So the first one is the first demographic breakdown. So we started with that one, but we still want to develop more graphs related to demographics. So the first one tells the story about what is the main demographic in jails and prisons. And unfortunately, Hawaiians are overly represented. So although they make up to 23% of the population, including Pacific Islanders, and that's a federal source, just so you know, they make up 47% of people in custody. So there's a huge representation of Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders in custody at the moment in the prisons and jails in Hawaii. We are going to move forward and add more breakdowns, specifically for separating Hawaiian population and Pacific Islanders in the next releases. So I wanted to give this overview to have an understanding of what is going on, but that it will be even more detailed on the next iterations of this data. In the next graph, which is the facility overcrowding rates, you can see how overcrowded some prisons are, some jails and prisons, especially when you talk about the main facility occupancy rate, such as in HCCC, MCCC, OCCC, whereas we have a lower occupancy rate on furlough programs, meaning we are not utilizing the furlough programs as much as we do with the main facility capacity. So you have too many people on regular cells, sometimes in dorms, and not as many people in furlough programs as we could have. In terms of incarceration statuses, overall, there's a separation between sentence, non-sentence, but I'm going to jump into jails and prisons specifically, as the makeup here varies differently depending on jails and prisons. So unfortunately, over half of the people incarcerated in jails are awaiting trial. So while less than 20% are sentenced, you have the majority of the population in jails not even being sentenced yet and just awaiting for the sentence, which is not really fair. In prisons, which are a longer term custody, there's more people that have been sentenced, but unfortunately, I think we should think about what are we doing that we have so many people waiting trial in pre-trial, whereas they're being in a jail while they are still waiting for the sentence. In terms of population at each facility, I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. For us and for the general public, it's interesting to know how many people are in the state jails versus in state prisons, and how many are on out-of-state prisons, such as in Saguaro, in Arizona. So the OCCC, which is the largest jail, accounts for the most of the incarcerated people, which is about 26% of the population. The rest is distributed in other jails, other prisons, but there's also a big representation of people outside the state in Arizona due to limitations in capacity. In terms of age overall, so the profile of people who are in prison assistance, it's about half being between ages 25 or 40, 25 and 44. And when you go to prisons, you have a slightly older population, but it's still the same representations between 25 and 44. But we did broke this down into jails versus prisons, so you can also see the difference between the profile of those in prison and those in jails. In terms of gender, as you all are aware, we do not have any female-specific jails in the state. So unfortunately, women are housed in men's facilities, and we broke down the population in jails and prisons between female and male, and it's about the same, so around 10%, 11% in jails and prisons for female, and about 90% for males. It's also interesting to note there's a rise in incarceration rates for women, unfortunately, throughout the whole country. But we also linked an article that might be interesting for you all to read about this hike in incarceration rates for women in specific here. In terms of custody classifications, there are 5 classification levels, so from maximum to community. And we want to highlight that over 65% of people are to be housed in secure restrictive cells, which means there's some higher need for cells that are more secure, and there's less people occupying less secure cells, dorms and other settings, sorry. This graph also represents the capacity between the system, jails and prisons. So we have the numbers of people who are currently in cells, dorms, and finally furloughs system-wide in jails and prisons. Those numbers are from September, so they are pretty updated. And finally, we also have the same breakdown for what is the housing type, but per facility. So you can see here how many people are in the dorms, cells, furlough programs in each facility. Some of them do not have furlough programs, and I want to highlight that unfortunately cells, which are the most restrictive housing type, are over capacity and highly utilized, although we do have furlough and dorms being under capacity and being underutilized at the moment. So back to you, Karan. do you want to continue with the slide?
Yeah, yes, thank you. This is great, great information. Yeah, we also, as a support of the data dashboard, we have a infographic that highlights the overall impression data and information about the current issues of all the correctional facilities. We created a visual map showing the jail and prison facility location on the 4 islands. Anyone who wants to learn about this data or information that can download and read the annual report. Going into the myth and facts section, the last piece. Our goal for the myth and facts section is to educate and provide the facts on topics to individuals who may have misconceptions about their correctional system. We selected the most popular topics to better inform and raise awareness to the public community. These are supported by research facts. Here we have the five myth and facts categories. I'm just going to pick 2 that stood out to me, overcrowding and probation. I found these 2 categories interesting because I hear many stories about overcrowding in the system, and also wanted to know the effects of long probation terms. As you click on the overcrowding, as she has done, myth 4 and 5 are related to the safety and well-being of individuals in the prison system. What I have learned, one of the key contributing factors of overcrowding is poor prison conditions that lead to increased violence, mental health and illness, mental health issues, and the spread of disease, which raises health safety concerns. The next one, probation, clicking on probation. Myth 1 is interesting to learn about the concerns about public safety related to individuals being on long probation terms. It is interesting to learn that long probation doesn't improve the outcome or increase the public safety, but hinders success of reintegration into society. In closing, we encourage friends and families and staff and everyone to share this information to the Hawaii community to inform and raise awareness on the current state of Hawaii correctional system. And lastly, I want to give a shout out to our ThoughtWorks development team that helped us make this project successful. I want to open the floor to Marilla. Do you have anything, last statement you'd like to share?
No, that was all. Thank you so much for you all. We are open for questions, and again, this is supposed to be a public font of information for everyone who's interested in learning more about what's going on. So it will be improved over time. We're going to learn more about what people want to know and what are the issues we should highlight. So this is the very first iteration of it.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I was just bringing up with Kristen, I know you're pulling data from different sources, and the recidivism data, I understand, is being taken from the Intermediate Sanctions Project. And when I used to be a member of that group, and there was a decision made, which I don't care for, that only one measure would be used for recidivism, and that was rearrest. Where that's many ex-offenders get rearrested just because they're ex-offenders. They didn't do anything. The federal government years ago went to using 3 levels: rearrest, a new conviction broken down by felony versus misdemeanor, and new sentence to incarceration. And you see those numbers dropping. Many more are rearrested than are reconvicted. Many more have lower level convictions than their original convictions and do not get sentenced back to incarceration. I don't know whether we'll get to that point, but I hope we do, that we're able to measure those 3 different levels.
Martha,
Yeah,
I also agree that somebody could be furloughed out or whatever on a property felony, but get rearrested for taking a Snickers.
exactly.
It's
Yeah.
very, very, very different. We ran into that in the family court all the time, and you got to be more discerning. Thank you.
Ted, any comments or from Ron?
No comments here.
Where can we get this, Kristen, this report? I'm interested in the pretrial detainees, whether the stats show different facilities, because the pretrial detainees are generally kept in the county jails, throughout different counties. And I'd like to see the type of offenses and the amount of bail for each pretrial detainee, so I can determine whether certain counties are higher in certain bail levels, as setting bail level for certain type of crimes.
So you're asking where you can get that information or where you can get the website?
Yeah, yes. I guess if you get it from the website, yes?
The bail information on there, as far as like specifically like the average amounts or different things, we're planning on adding that. It's not up there yet. But I can be sure that you all have the link to the website, and I think it's also in the chat. And then we can talk more about sources. I also just wanted to make a quick note too, that our overcrowding rates are going to be different than the Department of Public Safety's overcrowding rates as far as the jails go. And the reason for that is because we separate out furlough. Like, because furlough is such a specific, it's for such a specific population, like really people coming out of prison. We felt it was important to give a real understanding of what the jail population is. The additional piece there is that because furlough is so underutilized, and HCCC is a prime example of this, it really affects what appears to be the overcrowding rate. And so when you look at Halinani specifically, their beds aren't filled, and so their overcrowding rate is way, way lower. But then when you look at the main facility, they're way, way, way overfilled. And they're miles apart from each other. So anyhow, I just wanted to bring that up. We're trying to find ways just to be as transparent, but also like give the true story of what's happening as much as possible. And so I wanted to acknowledge that too.
And so Tommy brought up a question about this. So Tommy, we will be careful to ensure in the analysis that is made clear, that there is a separation of the furlough population versus the other incarcerated jail population.
Really want to shout out ThoughtWorks for coming and making Hawaii a project, a pilot for your folks' work. I think you provide us with a look at something that government agencies, community can look at a document, and the document sets many questions in motion. Yeah, and that's actually positive, no matter if it's a negative question or a positive question, but it gets us to a place where we can have a foundation of what needs to be done so that we can get the most accurate information on there and give us a sight and vision of data that we can move forward with the changes and reform that's needed in our system. So for everyone, commissioners, this is the first step, a first sight of what's being worked on. And there's no doubt as we continue to move forward, we're going to have continuing conversations. We did share this with public safety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so we're hoping to have a more in-depth discussions with their concerns on the information. But I'm happy that we have something to talk about. Yeah, and something that can be utilized for the community to see in face value on what the system looks like. So thank you so much for your work.
I want to say also, because you are grabbing the data from many different sources, often they're not compatible with each other. And, like the way things are counted, whether it's a case count versus a count of how many crimes they were accused of or convicted of. And very often the data does not agree with each other because of the sources they're coming from. The one I remember the most when I would do research is when you looked at police data for race analysis, the police would tell you all they do is look at the last name. So a person may be Hawaiian, Chinese, Irish, and they're listed as being white, where in fact they're a Pacific Islander, and then once you get further into the system, they're more specific about that.
Yeah, with the demographic sorry, with the ethnicity piece, we are going to be doing more state-specific information, and we're going to be working with OHA directly to make sure that we have the accurate number of how many Native Hawaiians are in the state of Hawaii, because we know that federal sources aren't always great, to your point. And so we will be breaking that down more. Yeah.
Yeah, because also I pointed out to Kristen on the ethnicity one, you had that 10% of the state was Hawaiian, Asian, or Pacific Islander. And that is not true at all. It's much larger than that. It's not just Hawaiians, it's Tongans, it's Samoans, it's Micronesians, it's all these other groups that are in there. It is very, very low. It's about a quarter of our population, maybe more.
We are welcoming any more comments that you folks may have here in the chat room on the ThoughtWorks work, and or to our staff in emails. Yeah, as we move forward and continue. At this time, I'm going to ask Kristen to go ahead and finish up with her coordinator's monthly report.
Okay. Thank you again, ThoughtWorks. We're really excited to launch that. All right, so looking at the Oversight Coordinator report, this is a monthly report that we put out and talk about at each meeting. George, if you could put the report into the chat, I'd really appreciate that. Starting off, we do have a late notice for a death in custody. This was not intentional by the Department of Public Safety. What happened was they let me know there was a very, very bad assault and the individual was in the hospital on life support. We just weren't notified that the individual actually passed. And so I do apologize to the commissioners. This should have been in the last report, but we're at least getting the information out now. So on September 5th, 2023, a person in custody, male 31 years old, was found badly assaulted in his cell at the Halava Correctional Facility. Facility staff immediately called 911 emergency services and secured the cell as a crime scene. The individual was transported to a nearby hospital where he was admitted on life support. Unfortunately, on September 6, 2023, the person in custody was pronounced deceased. The Honolulu Police Department, the State Attorney General, investigators, state sheriffs, and PSD's Internal Affairs Unit are all conducting their respective investigations, with the AG's office taking the lead in the investigative role. I do want to note that this is the second murder to occur in custody this year, the first occurring on July 7th, 2023. Next is correctional facility tours. Martha already covered women's. I am going to talk about the Las Colinas detention and reentry facility. I actually have a brief PowerPoint to show all of you. And so, Mark, should I just finish the report and then I can briefly go through that? Okay. So I'll skip that for right now. We'll come back to it, but there's a very thorough report written out. So next, the Oahu Community Correctional Center. So on October 9th, I took Amend to go and tour OCCC. This was a really important tour because I needed them to understand the conditions of the facility and be able to talk openly with staff and start to get to know them. I know that Amend has been brought up in various pieces of this meeting before, but I just want to be clear that, you know, they're a massive national organization and their entire goal is really to reduce the debilitating health effects on residents and staff, while also joining policymakers and community leaders to advance decarceration strategies. So they're all about accountability. They're all about, you know, looking at care as an overall arching healthcare system. And they do an incredible amount of training with departments of public safety across the nation. And so we were really lucky. We managed to convince them to jump Hawaii on their 3-year waiting list. So I'm very, very proud of that. Don't ask me how I did it. I don't know. But they not only jumped us on their list, they also agreed to come to Hawaii and waive all of their programming costs so that they could start working with the Department of Public Safety. I have to give Director Tommy Johnson a massive, massive shout out because he didn't have to work with them. He didn't have to have them work with his staff, but he was completely open to it. They opened their arms wide and welcomed them with a warm aloha. And so we're really thankful for that. Amen did complete 3 different workshops that were specific for Department of Public Safety staff. One was for their leadership. One was more for on the floor staff, like uniform staff. And then the last one was kind of a mix of everybody. And so we're excited to begin that relationship. Like Tommy said, we're hoping to bring them back in so they can continue to work with us. Usually they'll work with states for years, continuing to help them really transition to a rehabilitative and therapeutic model. And with that, I'll transition into the Breaking Cycles, re-envisioning a health, housing, and corrections continuum event. So Mike Town had brought up the symposium that happened last week. It happened on October 10th and October 11th. It was a wildly successful event. I was on the planning team for this event. I worked directly with Kathy from UH. Bob Merce was also on the planning team for this event. And so we were able to bring in an incredible amount of speakers, not only from out of state, but also local speakers who could really talk about the important work that they're doing now and how they're trying to continue and build this rehabilitative model. This event simply could not have occurred without the support of, again, Director Tommy Johnson. And so I really just want to thank you directly, Tommy. You know, people always say, put your money where your mouth is. I think this is a situation where, you know, the department went above and beyond in doing that and hosting all of these people and bringing them in. So we're very proud of how it came out. For those of you who had to miss the event, the videos will be posted from each of the panels. And so the website for the symposium is in the Oversight Coordinator report. Go ahead and check it out. There's pictures up already. The videos are just taking a little more time. But that will be posted. And additionally, Tommy had mentioned that Kathy is going to be doing a report kind of overviewing how the symposium went and what was covered. And so we'll look forward to sharing that as well. I'm going to skip over the HCR 23 task force as a later agenda item, and also as project updates. We've already covered the data webpage. In addition to that, we're still working on our case management system. Again, ThoughtWorks has been helping us to build that from scratch. It's completely customized for our office. We're hoping to launch that. Well, we will be launching that before the end of the year. So potentially next month we'll see. I tend to be a perfectionist, so I like it to be perfect before launching, but we're excited to get that up. And then lastly, I just want to mention this staff focus survey and report. Kara and I have a meeting with all of the wardens and chiefs of security on Monday, actually, where we'll be going over the survey, you know, getting their feedback on it and trying to figure out the best time of day to go to the facilities to get the most people to participate. So if you work for the Department of Public Safety and you're on this meeting right now, get excited for that. All right, George, can we bring up the brief presentation on Las Colinas? So again, the Las Colinas detention and reentry facility, there is a pretty decently long report in the Oversight Coordinator report, and so definitely check that out.
Hasn't been brought up yet.
I know. There it goes.
Oh, there.
So to give some background and context to this, on Thursday, September 28th, Representative Mark Hashem, myself, Kara Kampani from our office, Bob Merce, and also Warden Gilanta.
Yep.
Thank you. I call her Noni, but Warden from the women's facility had all gone to San Diego to check out this facility. We've heard so much about this facility. It's supposed to be one of the most progressive jails in the nation. After seeing it, I genuinely agree with that statement. George, the PowerPoint still isn't up. Sorry, guys, we'll get the PowerPoint up. I think it's important to at least see the pictures and then I can kind of walk through what we're looking at. Can we do it on the other computer?
As he figures out to see if he can keep on moving.
Yeah, we do have to keep on moving.
Okay, well, George, please keep working on that and we will come back to it.
We're reconnected. Sorry about that, folks. We got kicked off our hotspot.
Hello, everyone. Let's see if we can continue where we left off.
It's screen sharing a black screen, George. There it is.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Go ahead.
Can you hit in present mode? Okay,
Better than
so
nothing.
as I was saying before, we got kicked off. You know, there are a group of us that went to Las Colinas on September 28th, just so that we could see a different system and get a better understanding of what a more progressive jail looks like. So this is Las Colinas, and the first thing that I want to point out here is that you'll notice that it almost looks like a campus. It was very open, there were lots of trees. You know, they wanted it to be designed literally as a college campus to have more of that airy feel. George, you can go on the next slide.
We can just click on number 2, it'll pop up on number 3.
Yeah, on the right-hand side, just click on the next slide.
Yeah, we give it another couple minutes if not, we'll move on.
Yeah.
I mean, I can also talk about I think it's worth talking about the facility.
Yeah, you can talk about the facility, but don't. This isn't working.
There you go. Okay, perfect. All right. We can go to the next slide. So this facility works with 6 different classification levels. And so 1 through 3 are walking, which means that people can shift through any part of the facility. They don't need, you know, I mean, they use like passes and different things so they know where people are, but for the most part, it's not restrictive at all. They can go to classes, they can go to different things. And also out of approximately the 500 people in custody, about 160 were in level 4 through 6. And so they're trying really hard to keep people, you can keep clicking through, George. They're trying to keep people in the least restrictive space as possible. And so this is just a breakdown of where everything was on the facility. So this is the entrance. So just to show, like, again, very pretty. It doesn't look like a jail. It was meant to be a really inviting structure almost. So we can go to the next slide. So this is one of the low security housing. What I really liked about this is that it was all individual. And so what you see is what you get. You have one bed. They would of course have a mattress on top of that. And then each person had a desk and a chair. So it's just nice as far as privacy goes. And then we can go to the next slide. So this is the day room. And so again, like it's built like a college campus where it's very open, it's very bright. Every unit had an immense amount of windows, you know, and tons of seating. The structures on the left-hand side there are the video tablets. Each of them had a phone attached to them for more privacy when speaking on the tablets. It was just overall a really inviting space. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a dining area. And so again, like utilizing the green colors, the really pretty color palettes, very open, very inviting. During COVID, they didn't utilize the space at all. They're still shifting back into utilizing this space. But when we went, there were many women who were in the cafeteria enjoying their food. And it was just a really clean and nice layout in general. You can go to the next slide, George. Sorry, folks, there's a little bit of a lag. So George, you can like move through quicker and we'll move on with it. But these are the classrooms. And so they had a lot of different classrooms, a lot of different outdoor space. They have college classes and a lot of different programs that I'll go over in the future. But again, like I think that this just shows that we can have a jail that doesn't have to look like a jail, right? Like it can look like a college campus. This is the medical area. We didn't get to see it, but this is a picture that we found from the people who designed this. So again, private spaces, it looks very new. I will say this facility was built in, do you remember? Was it 2018?
15, something like
It might have been built somewhere between 2015, 2008. It's in the report, if nothing else. But what was really interesting was that everything looked brand new. They really took pride in just keeping everything as nice and clean and as up to date as possible. They knew that when they built the new facility, they didn't want to lose it. And so it was really good to see. You can go to the next slide, George. So the programs, they had a ton of different programs that range from college classes, hydroponics, they had a culinary program, industrial sewing, job fairs held at the facility, a Shakespeare program, they had outdoor movies in the amphitheater space. And they also had yoga classes. One thing that was really interesting about the culinary program specifically, they had two areas where women would cook food. One was the staff cafeteria, which was also very nice. And what was neat was the staff could go up and order on a menu whatever they wanted. And then the people in custody would go ahead and prepare it, like, you know, and it functioned almost like any fast food restaurant that you would walk up to and order. And so they would be able to gain a lot of different what is it called, like certifications for food service. They also had a coffee shop that was meant for the staff. The people in custody could order coffee once a week, but it was very fancy coffee. It was better than Starbucks. And what was neat about that was that Las Colinas actually partnered with Starbucks so that once people go through and work in the coffee shop and gain whatever certifications they need for that, they can actually get a job right after leaving. You can go to, you can skip the next slide, George. So other notable points about this facility is that telephone calls were completely free. Remote video visits were completely free. They had an open intake. So this means that they had a really large open space with chairs. And so when people were dropped off to the jail from the police department, they could sit in the chairs almost like a hospital or like a DMV. And then as you needed to go through your process, you would actually get called up to do that. And so that was really interesting. They also had cells for people who might be coming off of drugs or for people who were drunk. So if they had to use the cells, they would. But for the most part, we had people in the open intake space. They also had child-friendly contact visits. They had at least 4 different bays of spaces where women and children could just hang out and play. They had tons of toys, different things. They had no limit on how many children could visit, and they had no limit, or at least they had longer limits, I should say, of how long the families could visit. So their visits could last 2 hours. There was a ton of outdoor time for all incarcerated persons. They had a book club that was hosted by women judges. They also had cable TV and DVDs and video games in the lower security rooms, an extensive library. The facility no longer uses the term inmates or body or whatever other term that correction staff typically use. Instead, they use incarcerated persons or IPs. They also had soft drink vending machines in the day rooms. They had picnic tables outside of the day rooms. And again, staff were provided with an at-cost lunch and coffee to order. And staff also had a respite room so that they could relax and chill and hang out. And they also had a really, really great wellness program for staff that was led by uniformed staff, you know, because really they're the only ones who understand what other staff are going through. And so we were really impressed with not only how they took care of their incarcerated population, but how they took care of their staff. George, you can go to the last slide. So again, all of the notes from Las Colinas are far more thorough than what I just presented now. And so please read the Oversight Coordinator report this month if you haven't already. But overall, we were extremely impressed with Las Colinas. We really, really appreciate them having us and spending so much time with us. I think they thought the tour was going to be an hour or 2. I think we ended up being there for 4 or 5 hours. They were really open to us asking any and all questions. And so I just wanted to share that and reiterate one more time that when we're thinking about building a new jail or any type of new facility in general, we can do better and we need to do better. And when we see a jail that already exists that's doing this, it tells me that we can build it even better. And so I was just excited to share that with all of you, and also really, really appreciate Rep. Hashem for having interest in even, seeing a different facility outside the state. And that is it for my report.
Thank you, Kristen, for that report. As we move on in the agenda and being conscious of the time, as you can tell, this has really been a great meeting, a lot of information being put out there, to let you folks know that our staff is just continually working from every angle. HCR 23 task force, just real short.
Mark,
Yes,
I had a follow for Kirsten.
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the last facility I was able to tour with you was the Maui facility. I think it was in July or August. And when we were there, we identified some very serious problems in my view. I think this range from extensive lockdown and overcrowding in at least 2 of the modules, serious fire safety issues, a high level of idleness, and restricted access to the grievance system. Have you been able to follow up or get any kind of follow-up from the department as to what they're doing about these issues?
Yes. Thank you for asking that. So yes, the department wrote really thorough reports for every report that we have done on all the jails so far. And so they did responses to all of the recommendations. I did share that with all of the commissioners. I haven't been able to dig into it yet. I was going to prioritize that after this commission meeting, actually, so that we can cover it in the next one. I also need to double check with the AG's office. There might be some areas in the reports that have to be redacted. I'm not positive about that, but I just want to make sure to double check with them so that the commission doesn't post something that wasn't supposed to be public. But we are going to post all of the reports that, I want to be clear about that. It's just we have to make sure that we're careful for safety and security. But yes, they have responded, Ted, and I apologize that I haven't been able to dig into all of those responses. They're very thorough, though.
Yeah, thinking back on some of the issues of Kristen, I don't see what would need to be redacted. For example, the most egregious fire safety issue we saw was padlocks on the back doors. And the issue is, the solution is very simple. Just take those padlocks off. So in case there's a fire, inmates can escape. So I don't see what needs to be redacted.
It's the overall report, not the individual things. There's a lot of things that probably can be said, but we just want to make clear that the commission will be clear of any kind of liability should we release the report.
And so Ted, the commission reports are up already, and I think
Yeah.
what you're referring to is
The
that
responses.
the responses may
responses.
have to have some redaction.
Yeah, sorry, Ted. So Tommy had asked each facility to go through all of the recommendations and address them, and then put into writing what they did to address it. And if they couldn't address it, they had to explain why. So the facility wrote it, my understanding is, without necessarily writing it for the public, right? And so I just want to be really careful and make sure that we don't accidentally release something that we shouldn't have. And so all of the response to our reports will be released. I just need to really go through them, triple check that there doesn't have to be like a small redaction here or there.
Yeah, I'm having trouble understanding why we need to look at the entire picture when I understand that part, but we have a very specific issue with Maui fire safety. You got padlocks there, and that is a huge no-no. If there's a fire in there, people die. Simple as that. So can we have a report that says, yes, the padlocks have been removed?
We
And
do have
inmates-
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have that.
That's all I'm asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I sent that to all the commissioners. All the commissioners have those reports. I'll resend them though. But I want to be transparent that I personally haven't gone through all of them yet. They're all really long and thorough. And so I just want to be transparent about that. But I'm going to.
Yeah, I understand the issue of looking at the access to the grievance system overall. But you know, we're talking about very specific things where the grievance forms and the grievance boxes are not accessible to inmates in certain areas, period. Make them accessible.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
just to reiterate, and I did say it earlier in the meeting, that the public safety has responded to all the commission's visits to the different facilities. We just haven't really gone through the reports in depth, or our staff hasn't, in order to make a full report on whether or not they what they did with the recommendation. So we're gonna continue to work on that, Ted, and we'll send you another copy of those reports.
Thank you.
Okay. HCR 23, we'll be meeting on November 2nd. The commission has been chairing that. This will be our second meeting. So we have no real full report on that. As we continue to move.
It is open to the public, correct?
Okay, so we do have a tab on our website for the HCR 23 that as we get information and presentations and videos, it'll be presented there for the community to go to. You will be allowed to be there during our meetings to observe
No,
and
not
listen?
in person. They can watch the live stream.
on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, not live, but on the Zoom. Okay, so that's where we are at right now.
And it's from 9 AM to 12 PM, and it'll be live streamed on our YouTube and Facebook pages.
But also Zoom, right? Since I don't use YouTube or Facebook.
No, it's not gonna be a Zoom link that people can log on and watch. It's on our YouTube or Facebook page.
Jesus.
Okay, I don't understand the technology, but everything that you just said.
Yeah.
Okay, with that being said, open up for public comment.
Hello, may I add something?
Yes.
Yes,
My name is Yamit. I have a brother at Kulani Correctional. I spoke at the beginning. I've listened through this entire Zoom, and a couple things that have come up from my experience with my brother being there. One, he works 2 jobs. He works at the farm from 7 AM and then he works in the kitchen with a very short break in between. And he is unable to attend the library, the gym, get a haircut, go to rec, any of those things, because he has those 2 jobs, which he finds very valuable and a good way to spend his time there, but he's penalized for not and is therefore not able to do basic things that everyone else is able to do. So if there's any way to make time slots or help those that are working have the opportunity to enjoy some rec time or go to the library, that is very important to him. And also regarding phone calls, I know Kulani at the moment is only allowing the minimum amount of time for phone calls. So he has a very short time span to call me and my mom and his dad and all of us to check in. And that's very, very hard. I know this is a lower security facility, but it sure doesn't seem that way with the phone calls and visitation rules being extremely, extremely limiting.
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mira? Is that hand up
Oh,
or?
you're on mute, Mira.
Mira, you're on mute. Please unmute.
It's just the same one that had problems before. Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead, Kat.
Unmute.
Sorry.
Hi, hello.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mira.
hi, I'm Mr. Johnson.
Yes, Mira.
Yeah, I'm the mother of Elram Gavrieli, and just a minute ago, my daughter Yamit Betesh talked about some of the things that I wanted to talk. So I will leave it that way, but I just would like you to do the best you can so we can help us to go and visit my son and have some quality time with him, and not through glass if it's possible. That's all I
Mira-
want to say.
Thank you, Mira.
And Mira, Tommy Johnson, the director of the department, is going to get back directly to your daughter.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank
Karen?
you.
I was wondering if the University of Hawaii School of Architecture are the ones who designed the addition to the women's facility.
I do not believe so.
I don't believe
I
so.
don't think so.
Okay. That's reassuring. Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you, Ken. Jess? I need to get glasses.
Hi.
Hi,
Hi. I'm going to be sharing two public comments. One is from me and one is from a member of our organization who can't be here. Okay?
go ahead, Jess.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna read some. So thanks so much for hosting us at the symposium last week. It was awesome to see people in person and yeah, be able to hear in that lateral way that's possible when we're in the room together. And for the record, I want to connect some of the promises and highlights which Tommy Johnson shared and see if we could make sure that they're moved forward, perhaps with a broader mind. So he supports wraparound reentry. So I want to note here that that sounds like it could be pu'uhonua to me, as well as valuable work by other long-established groups that's not in the jail setting. He also says he wants to provide culturally based programming with OHA, cultural practitioners, and community partners. I hope the Oversight Commission will be holding him to this. I hear that there's already a lot of challenges with people getting into Halava to provide cultural-based practice for people. So that's something to note going forward. Ohana Ho'opakele will be trying in the future. So we just want to put a pin on that promise. And so given all that we're told the Department of Public Safety supports, I'm wondering what the next steps are from the legislative priorities session, especially. Will there be some type of synthesized report back before the spring recommendations come out? Who is going to be involved in that process for deciding priorities? And whose priorities are they going to be? Like, are they going to be the Oversight Commission's priorities? Are they going to be recommendations for Department of Public Safety? Will they be priorities for us all to work with together? And a few kind of sub points on that. And so on the who, Troy from LARP said it's crucial to think about who is going to carry and drive the work forward. So I'm wondering, how will all the people in the room, or people, you know, in a way representing organizations that are not employed by the state, be part of carrying that work forward? My phone just, here we go. And then I'm also hoping that that vote around the priorities wasn't the full process for deciding action items. So will there be another loop for us to be involved in that? We would like a seat at the table in that process. And then I'm also wondering if the Oversight Commission School of Design can share out the notes contents before the distillation, so we as movement organizations can use all that labor that went into that workshop to support our work going forward. So for example, I was at a diversion section, which I was only at because there wasn't room for reentry. That's why I'm like, well, we get a chance to circle back around and look at the whole picture together, because I went to the table where I could sit with an elder where there was space, and we would be sure to be like heard and be able to like work with the boards. So it was pretty chance. So at diversion, though, we did really rad work. Established Pu'uhonua Wellness Center was one of the recommendations that came from multiple people. And that's something that Ohana Ho'opakele provided follow-up steps on. There was end cash bail, and there was fund and continue the Oversight Commission body. The other table had end mandatory minimums, training for judges on sentencing options and system impacts. And so I ask about the priorities, because if we look at number 2, for example, ending cash bail, if that becomes a collective or shared priority between all the parties in the room, including the Department of Public Safety, to recommend, advocate, and champion, then the jail populations could decrease by a huge amount, right? That's 78%. Thank you, ThoughtWorks, for making that new data visuals, or even like a modest 30%. And then the OCCC replacement project, which was pushed ahead at that symposium also, would look dramatically different in size and resources. And he's told us he's planning to build for the max 1,100 beds. And the historical evidence for jail shows that if you build it, you'll fill it. So why should we be planning jail design for the future match of our current trajectory if we could work on priorities that actually could totally redirect what this looks like? And if we follow the sage advice of the presenters from Los Angeles, care first, jail last, then many solutions, legislative priorities potentially could come before the jail, including reentry and diversion infrastructure such as pu'uhonuas on every island. So really wondering about who these priorities are for, who will be involved in shaping them. And then some participatory things on that, on the process. Was that worksheet just like a one-stop shop, or will there be a way that organizations or people who could not travel to Honolulu or who are at a different table in the room could offer content for jail design for all of the other sections? So that's some ideas. I've done a lot of strategic planning with iterations of groups and circles. I'm happy to talk. I mean, the design people are the experts, but I've worked with designers on these processes. And then also on the jail expansion projects, the 2 diversion alternative to jail and reentry panel sessions I thought were so awesome. Thank you for putting those on. The presenters from Los Angeles were informative and inspiring. Shoshana and Troy gave great presentations, and it was awesome to see reform efforts that I was familiar with and spoken about with such great data to show years later. In my time at my previous organization from 2010 to 2022, we were our Los Angeles chapter was a part of LARP, that's the Los Angeles Regional Reentry Project, and the Alternatives to Jail Working Group, which produced those over 150, I think it's like 172 ATI recommendations, as Shoshana mentioned. And we're also a core organization in the effort to reform the LA County jail system, as she had in her presentation. And the 3 demands of those reform efforts from the early 2000s through 2019 were no jail construction in LA County, reduce the number of people locked up in jails, and redirect funding to community solutions. And as that coalition developed into the Justice LA Coalition from 2017 to 2019, the rallying cry became jail first, care last. And I was going to ask LARP, Troy, to speak on that era of threats of jail expansion, but we ran out of time. There's, you know, I understand we're in a symposium. There's time for about 3 questions. But this is the question that didn't get in the room. So Troy said at the closing, you need a system of care, not new jails. So I'm wondering if the Oversight Commission had a chance to speak to LARP's orientation on the $3.5 billion jail expansion in LA, which ultimately got defeated. And if you haven't talked to them about that, I would strongly suggest following up with them to think through these practical solutions and these contradictions and opportunities. We have to make a responsible set of decisions about our priorities for shared resources and lives, and that awesome set of outcomes, which they presented on. That's possible when we prioritize needs first and jail last. The governor said in his opening remarks, we have a runway. If we start now, we can make incredible changes. And so one thing I also want to encourage starting now on is incorporating Hawaiian culture, but also not always going all the way to Norway for alternatives. Could you consider more fundamental value-based alternatives that are rooted in Pacific Island culture instead of just trying to get window dressings? So I understand the trip to Norway was really informative, but what can we actually learn here? That's not just additional programming, which people may or may not have access to, but what actually informs how we utilize the concrete and the people's time and the trees in these settings. So that's from me. Gonna take a breath and then read notes from talking to Van. Van was at the symposium. He got out in September thanks to the hard work of a lot of people on this call and support from the commission after 23 years of being inside. He also kind of had his hand ready and I would like wait and listen when the mic was being passed around. So I just want to bring some of his follow-up into this room, since the symposium format, and no shade on it, didn't allow all of that. So I asked him, what should we remind the Oversight Commission and the coordinators of the symposium after as they're setting priorities? And so he said, for Native Hawaiians, we're in a time of needing to redo infrastructure. And in order to redo infrastructure, we have to redo water rights and many basic things, such as access to land, basic income and purpose. We want to improve the Native infrastructure. And me as Jess, I'm bringing this here because I think that every state department that has a disproportionately harmful or extractive impact on Native Hawaiians also has a kuleana to think about this rebuilding and how we're removing people from the land or keeping people in connection with their community. So what do people need? Van says people need sufficient funds to rebuild themselves, homes to call their own and be part of community, income, source of livelihood. He invoked the law of the splintered paddle, that there can be an edge that's a cultural community one that helps us build strong communities. People can help their own people, family can take responsibility for that person. They need to have access to them and to be stable. So as we're at this time of a nation in its inception, a nation being rebuilt and developed, people here before Native Hawaiians had land insurance. We should think about that land insurance and return to housing when we think about reentry. He said, I really liked the analogy, wait for him to come down, talking about the example from Norway around the tree, which the guy from Amen shared. And he's like, right, that's community choice. We need systems that are designed with community choice. People can choose into the support, but they have to make that choice. We should design systems of voluntary care. Instead of more jails and prisons, we need, quote, first responders in all categories. Raise their salaries, they deserve to be paid better. If we increase resources for these community supported roles, can increase capacity and respond better, then we also have people with really good jobs that are 8-hour shifts, as well as 24-hour response centers or resources. We need to head in that direction. He said we need to find a middle road for negotiations communities, Native Hawaiians may not accept all the ideas. They don't have to, but the objective is for us to get to the top of the mountain. Some people will take longer to get there. The best path is to love your neighbor and family, let love prevail, but you have to have a direction, and a direction will serve as a morality motivator. You do well with others and then yourself. And in order to have a direction, you need to not be locked up. So that's from Van. Mahalo for having us there. It was awesome to be together.
Thank you, Jess. Make sure you send us, I'm assuming that you got everything written down that you just talked about. Make sure you get that to us so that we can review it and then follow up with you later. All right. Thank you, Jess.
Some are on paper notes, so I'll send them probably next week, Van's words.
Thank you so much. Aloha, everyone. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, real quick, our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 16th on the Big Island. We'll be visiting Kulani Correctional Facility
And Halinani.
and Halenani.
And then to add to our agenda for next time, we do have to do our legislative priorities, which was brought up. I already had that on my list. And then we will have a follow-up discussion with WCCC that we will report back to you on.
And do we have a place on the meeting yet, the meeting site?
It's gonna be at UH again.
At
The
the,
same.
at the University of Hilo. Okay, same place that we were at the last visit that we were there. And then a real quick. No, let me get- We have to say that we're going to Nicole.
What?
Did you mention that we were going to Nicole?
No, I forgot.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also next month, Mark, Martha, and I will be attending the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement Conference, also known as NACOL. You can look NACOL up, but they do a lot of really tremendous work in the oversight world. They work with police oversight and corrections oversight. And so we will be going to a conference that's specific on corrections oversight. And we're really looking forward to it. And so I will report back on that after the conference.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, commissioners. Any last words from Ted, Ron, or Mike?
I think Mike left us for an arbitration.
If not, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next month. Aloha, mahalo.
Thank you.